The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello, friends, and thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week, we're going to review two matches. One of them quite good, the other one pretty bad, actually. But we'll talk about the good and the bad and takeaways from both of those. We'll also get into a few bits of Austin FC news, and then we're going to interview MLS Season Pass announcer, play-by-play announcer Keith Costigan to help preview the upcoming RSL game on Saturday. So we're excited about that. My name is Landon Cottam, and I'm joined as always by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley. Yeah, I really appreciate Keith getting on. I don't think either of us knew at the point in time when we arranged this interview, which was a couple hours ago, that Keith was going to be rolling off having just done the Violette match to help us talk about RSL. So we really appreciate that. And then I'm really happy that normally we would give ourselves some time to process what happened and don't go live right after matches, because I do not understand what just happened to us. I don't know how you feel about it, but like I am not equipped with the words to describe Tuesday evening for Austin FC.
Yeah, well, Keith gives a little bit of insight later on in that interview, but we'll talk about that one on the back half of the show. How about that? Let's start off with some Austin FC news, and then we'll talk about the happy game, and then we'll talk about what happened tonight. How about that?
Perfect. That sounds good. That's what I need.
All right, well, let's lead off with the latest Austin FC news. You want to run us through that real quick?
Yeah, one of the things that came out on the day that we released the show last week, so we got information on the Julio Cascante injury. I guess it was not as bad as it could have been, but not exactly good. So ultimately, he was diagnosed with a severe left adductor strain sustained in that opening match against St. Louis City. The injury will not require a surgical operation. And a lot of people originally saying like, oh, he's going to be out 8 weeks. The story says he'll be reevaluated 8 weeks. I feel like 8 weeks. I feel like he's going to be out more than 8 weeks, because they're not going to reevaluate him and then be like, okay, and he's playing tomorrow. So I think expect this to be, I don't know, a 10-week injury at minimum. And we'll probably talk about how Austin has reacted to that when we talk about the game reviews. But it's not great news, right?
Yeah, it's pretty bad news. I mean, especially with just what had gone on with center backs in the week before. We're already kind of talking about depth and what would happen if somebody went down. And then we were faced with that, and it went terribly. Now, Emerald Tarek came out of the CCL game tonight with some type of injury. We don't know what's going on with him, but getting thinner by the minute at center back. And so I think there's a lot of people who have maybe complained about Julio in the last couple of years who maybe are thinking, actually, Cascante is not so bad at this point.
Well, maybe let's, we saw a lot of discussion around how Austin had to go out and replace him right away when that happened. And which seems like a pretty typical response given what most of our sports experience is. But maybe let's spend a minute on why that's not necessarily something you can do or should do when you look at the way Major League Soccer teams are constructed.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if we have just like a boatload of cap space, a boatload of allocation money sitting around doing nothing, and they were kind of hoping to bring in another guy anyway, then great, go for it. Go get the best center back that you can find with the money you have. But if you're just trying to get a guy that can play for the next 8 weeks and we don't have all that money, like it may be a foolish way to spend the money, right? Like you bring in a guy, we end up with 5 or 6 center backs on the roster, and then it's another, like, chances are the guys you're going to be able to get just with the spare change in your pocket are going to be like Amro Tarek level guys who are like kind of career backup MLS center backs. And so if that's all that's available, or that's all we can afford, I think we should just maybe stick it out with Alex Ring and Kip Keller, plugging that gap until Cascante is back, because it's not worth kind of handcuffing your spending ability for the next year or two because we panicked for a couple of weeks.
And I feel like that not doing that is very consistent with the way Austin's built so far. Like has been a little bit of the criticism, especially in the first year, is that like Austin was not going to make like giant bold moves because this roster's always been designed to be flexible, and this roster's always been designed to leave options to plug holes in the future. And if suddenly you rush out and make what could easily be a panic move given what's available to replace Julio, then you really do hamstring yourselves. And I wonder a little bit too if that's exacerbated by a team that doesn't have a permanent sporting director situation sorted. It's like you don't have a single vision at this point, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that's debatable because I don't know, like we don't know who's in those conversations and how much power they have in those conversations. Like, how much power did Sean Rubio have before? How much say did he have in those things? How much say did Josh Wolf have in those things before? And so, yeah, maybe it's changed a lot and there isn't a clear vision, or maybe it hasn't changed that much. But these are like the things I wish we could know, but don't.
That we'll never know, that we've been told that we're never going to know.
Yeah,
those kind of things. All right, let's go into happy news. This is probably a little bit related to the lineup for the Montreal match, but Nick Lee had a baby and had like a very adorable baby just a few days ago. So I think we could just celebrate that. And
congratulations,
good for Nick. Good for Nick and his partner. He looked very happy about it.
And then one other bit of, I guess, roster news is that all three of the remaining super draft picks, so if they're, I guess, super draft picks not named CJ Fodre, all got signed to Austin FC 2. And so kind of expecting that to happen. We knew that they were playing friendlies with that team already, so it looks like it's official. We now have 13 players on that roster. How many more do you think we can expect, Jeremiah?
I believe that Claudio said that they were looking for about 16 or so signings to the Austin FC 2 roster, and then you'll have, I think, 4 to 6 academy players playing up, and you'll have guys playing down. I mean, we're almost done with that roster, and it's pretty broad. So there's one keeper. We expect possibly Damian Loss will be an addition to Eric Lopez there.
And then I know for one of the friendlies out at the training center, whenever the first team is playing as well, Charlie Reed, one of the academy keepers, was suited up with that team as well. So you would think with those three, they may add one more, but that's probably good enough for the moment.
Yeah, you've got 4 defenders there, 5 midfielders, 4 forwards. So you feel like generally that roster is mostly what it's going to be. It's interesting that it's built from all different places, right? Austin also, FC2 also added, I think, a player on loan maybe the week before to that roster from Atlas. So they're kind of all over the place, and I'm excited to see how this team comes together. And I guess, do you think that, like, for the future, this is where we'll see the super draft picks going? You know, for the first couple of years, there wasn't a second team to send players to, so you had like 1 or 2 picks that got signed, and then everybody else kind of went off on their own. Do you think that that'll be sort of the way that Austin replenishes the second team roster going forward?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think like MLS Next Pro is kind of a Wild West at this point. By conversations I've had with folks who are paying attention to youth soccer and kind of lower level soccer, MLS Next Pro level was actually quite bad last year, which I think people within MLS know that, and they expect it to get better and to build it over time. Like it's a first year league, but I could see a reality where if the level doesn't get better, maybe some of these college guys don't want to play there. And so you get drafted. Okay, I'm not going to make the first team. I'm going to go see if I can make a USL squad somewhere because I don't want to play with this Next Pro team. I think there will always be guys who, just to get into a setup, to learn a system, that gives you a better chance of making that first team roster maybe a year from now, 2 years from now. And so I think, yeah, there will be guys signing from college to those teams, but it's going to be interesting to see how MLS develops that league and kind of where they think the ceiling for it is and how quickly they can get it there.
All right, let's get into this week. We don't have there's not a ton of other news to talk about, and we do have 2 matches to talk about, and we may regret our decision to delay this recording until after the second match, because I feel like we were just before off air. We both like Montreal. Suddenly, I don't remember anything about, and I'm less excited talking about it. But I think we should still, maybe in the spirit of having the hopes of the fan base up, we should go ahead and go through the Montreal match and talk through what was overall like a really strong performance, even though the 1-0 scoreline didn't necessarily make it seem that way.
Yeah, so let's talk about the starting 11. So the lineup graphic came out, um, and I think most of us were confused, to say the least,
For
just
sure.
trying to figure out, okay, I know all these guys' names and I know what positions they generally play, and I cannot put together a starting 11 with these guys right now. um, what we ended up seeing was Alex Ring as a center back. I was going to say nominally a center back, but he was playing
He
center
was a
back.
center back, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So should we jump into like what the actual formation was at this point?
Yeah, I would like that because I'm still. I mean, I was confused, but we were both at Hop Squad when it came out, but I don't think we ever actually saw each other. We were different parts of the facility, and I was like trying to cipher it all out. But yeah, let's just go through sort of what ostensibly the starting 11 looked like formation wise.
Yeah. So what part of what was so confusing last week was that the week before, Jean Kolmanich was starting as more or less a left back and was defending as a left back, but in possession, he was pushing high and wide and was the guy like stretching the back line on the left and providing the width on the left. And so when we saw Kolmanich in the roster and Gallagher in the roster, we're thinking like, okay, based on what we saw last week, one of these guys is going to play center back like for stretches of the game and like kind of tuck in, or maybe we're just going to abandon that and we'll just go kind of what we saw last year with where the fullbacks don't overlap and both of them stay a little bit tucked in, a little bit deeper. I had no clue what to expect. And what ended up actually happening, I think, was the most surprising of all scenarios, where Jean Kolmanich ended up playing in a back three for a lot of the game. And during the moments when he wasn't there, it was at times Brad Stuver was kind of acting as the left center back. And then at times Danny Pereira was acting as the left center back. And so really strange. After seeing it work and in action, I actually really like it. And I think it worked really well. Austin looked, regardless of the score, like Austin looked really good for most of this game, I thought. And I like, again, this may be me getting excited about something new and exciting that just like piques my interest. But I actually think it worked this time, more so than in the first game. And so, again, the formation was kind of like in attack anyway. It was that 3-2-2-3. So last week we saw Lima tuck in from the right side to become a back three. Kolmanich would push high. This week it was the opposite. John Gallagher was the right back. He was pushing up and becoming the right wing. And Emiliano Rigoni would tuck in and be part of that attacking line of two midfielders, which, again, that surprised me too. Then Jean Kolmanich would tuck in and kind of be in that back three with Leo Weissen and Alexander Ring. But one thing that's a little bit different in this time was, say the ball went into Brad Stuver, there was a goal kick. Weissen and Ring would both push out way right. So Weissen wasn't staying in the middle often. He would go way outside. Kolmanich would be pretty wide to the left still. And if there were pressure on the center backs, Pereira would drop in between Weissen and Kolmanich and provide an option there. Kolmanich would push up higher. And so a few times you would see him kind of like passing the ball along that back line. Danny Pereira would drop in. He would cause a forward to step to him, and then he would push it out to Jean Kolmanich, and they would be out. And so it made, I don't remember very many times where Montreal's press really gave Austin options, because they were doing a really good job of rotating, moving, getting passes through, and then getting out of that press without too much fuss. There's, again, a couple of times where it did, but it seemed much smoother than what we saw at times last year and the week before.
So one other thing I wanted to bring up, or one thing I wanted to bring up is like, it's another game where Austin was statistically dominant, right? Like Austin had more possession, more shots on target, more a strong lead in terms of like X goal performance. But just for whatever reason, like things were not connecting on the end of things. And Josh Wolf talked, at some length about that in the post-game press conference, about how I don't think he actually used our favorite word, which is being ruthless finishers. But, just like it wasn't fitting together for almost the whole match. Like, what was that, something Vancouver did, or like something Austin was Vancouver, Montreal did, or Austin was missing out on, or like why were things just not like connecting?
I think some of it's just bad luck. If you, I watched the game back and was really wanted to pay special attention to Jossie Zardes and Emiliano Rigoni, two guys who got chances and didn't finish them. I think Zardes, the chances he missed, I think are a bit more forgivable. There's one header he got, but it was kind of awkward, and he was the way the ball arrived to him, he was like flat-footed and couldn't get much power on it. But there's a lot of times where he was in a great spot and the cross just didn't quite find him, or he was in a great spot and someone stuck a foot in right there. Like there were a lot of those moments. So it was working. Like we were getting into those spots. I think Emiliano Rigoni had two really good chances in the box. And so before talking about like whether he shouldn't or shouldn't have finished it, Josh Wolf, after the first game after St. Louis, talked about how we needed to get Rigoni in front of goal more often. I think this new setup helped do that by having Gallagher push up beyond him and have Rigoni kind of tucked inside. He was able to get into the box more often to be the receiver of service at times instead of the actual crosser of the ball or playing the ball into the box. And he got into those moments, which I think is exactly what Wolf wanted to happen, is for Emiliano Rigoni to get the ball at his feet in the box in front of goal. And one of them, the first one, Kamal Miller slides in and does an excellent job of blocking it. I think
Austin FC legend Kamal Miller, which we always have to refer to him as. Yes,
didn't pay my respects on that one. I think Rigoni could have done better on that one, but it wasn't easy. I don't think it was as easy as it maybe looked at first glance. The second one, he absolutely should have done better. He had a lot of goal to shoot at and ended up going right at the keeper. So I think that one is a bit less forgivable. But the fact is, he got in those positions, got on the ball. So if we can keep doing that, keep getting these guys in those possessions, Zardes keeps getting in these spots that he's getting. If he does that, just continues to do that throughout the season, some of these are going to go in. Just this is how, like, I know like expected goals is a bad word in Austin FC world, but our XG was quite high in this game. Jossie Zardes has accumulated pretty high XG in just these first two games. And again, it's not a reliable metric in the short term. I know that, but just even by the eye test, we're getting in good spots. We're getting good chances. Some of these are going to start falling. I'm not really all that concerned about that part of it.
Well, then another, so Matt Doyle in his like armchair analyst article, this on another Zardes point, talked about, I don't know, what was it, like Urruti and Zardes completed like what, 2 passes to each other all night. Okay, this is what I knew. This is the thing if we get you wound up, which is literally the only reason I'm bringing this up. So can you rebut that a bit of commentary from a guy I think we both like and respect, but a guy who probably has to watch too many games to have a lot of like deep insight on every individual one.
Yeah. It's there are too many games for them to watch, but the part that annoys me is when you make definitive statements based on a game that you did not watch. And so, yeah, Urruti and Zardes are not connecting passes, but like, I don't think they're supposed to be connecting passes. It's not like they were trying to pass it to each other a lot and not doing it. They're actually playing pretty close to each other on the field. And oftentimes, like in this game especially, Zardes was dropping in to the midfield quite a bit and offered a really good outlet. We talked about in the St. Louis game where we would break the press and get forward, and they would kind of outpace Denny Pereira and Owen Wolf, and there'd just be a line of 4 guys across the front with John Colemanich driving, and he had no outlets inside. And I think both the tins, so Urruti and Rigoni, both did a good job of dropping in to provide an option in those moments so that we didn't just run into a brick wall. And then also Jossie Zardes, as the ball was moving through the middle, would drop in and provide an option there. And when he would do that, the other guys would make runs in behind. And so oftentimes when Zardes was with the ball at his feet, Urruti was making a run in behind. So when Zardes would lay it off to someone else, then that pass goes to Urruti. And so I don't think this is like, oh, I think a quote was like, these guys are clearly not on the same page. And I think that's nonsense. Like, it's nonsense. Zardes is looking pretty good already in the system after 2 games. And yeah, I just don't think that's a good metric of whether or not this team is playing well, because I thought by pretty much every metric but goals, they played a really good game the other night.
Yeah, well, I want to talk about the goal, but we have another tweet that I think we wanted to mention with the kit and tactics analogy, and I have no idea how to pronounce this Twitter user's name or handle.
Oh, so yeah.
I was hoping you would lead us into that.
Keith Lawak. He's a guy I've played pickup with a few times, but also interact with a bunch on Twitter, and he's a friend of Kevin Morris. But we were talking about just like what this shape was, and I think he was like, he didn't think John Coleman was playing as a center back. And it's like, as interesting as these tactics are and like this attacking shape is, I love watching it and I love like trying to dissect it and learn more about it, but it is extremely hard to talk about because there's only like 1 or 2 players who are playing the same position on offense and defense. And so like to say Jean Coleman was a center back is like pretty like he's not really a center back, but he's kind of a center back. And so Klitlavog says the kit tactics analogy is growing on me. Wolf tactics is like the Vosse's kit, some kind of remix on a traditional approach that changes depending on where on the field / kit you look. And so I think that's perfect. Like depending on how you look at this new Austin FC jersey, you see different things depending on the angle, depending on the way the light hits it, it looks different. I think that's exactly right with this new attacking shape. I've heard some people say like they wish that we would just go back to what was working last year. I would argue like for a lot of the back half of the season, it wasn't really working last year. We kind of had a skid in form and we weren't scoring goals as much. Do you think that's fair to say?
Well, I was going to say I see it in this way because I feel like there's too many things going on. I like last year's version better, and I didn't understand what they're trying to do. So I think I would agree with the comparison. Yeah, with the negative comparison to this year's jersey. Like, I just feel like I feel like there's like things being tried for the sake of trying them, and I guess as a fan, like I'm always going to be impatient, and so I think to your bigger point, like maybe this will pay off in the long term. Right now, I mean, maybe this will pay off in the long term, but for right now, it feels a little bit like chaos for the sake of chaos.
What I'm saying, I think it worked on Saturday. We just got a little bit unlucky with the finishing. Either like crosses not quite finding guys in the box, or Rigoni just straight up missing a couple of chances. And so I think that felt like a game. If you get one early, like Montreal falls apart maybe. And so like the first game, I said like maybe I'm just getting excited because this is new and interesting, but with the second game, like it's working. I think it's working, and so I'm very excited for them to keep doing this and to keep trying it out and see what happens, because I think it's bringing some interesting new looks, some less predictable looks, and some more dynamic ways that we can slightly change personnel or positioning depending on who we're playing against.
Well, so you maybe to just what we were talking about, you wanted to discuss players a little bit. So, in not overreacting to the first 2 games, I think it's definitely fair to talk about Emiliano Rigoni and Giassi Zardes. And like the common opinion suddenly that I don't know if it's the prevailing opinion, but it's definitely an opinion. Like we should scrap both those guys and like just roll with the Ethan Finley and Maxi Urruti.
Yeah, I mean, I think the heat for Rigoni is more deserved. Outside of those misses, I actually thought he played a really good game and really good defensive work rate, was tracking back, covering a lot of ground, positioning, providing some like movement in behind, even though he was played as more of like in the position of an attacking midfielder. When the ball would go wide to Gallagher, he would often make a run in behind. And so he was still offering that vertical threat at times, which I think is one of his strengths. And so like it worked better. It made more sense seeing it in action than I thought it would. And so I think he still has some to offer. The thing with him, like if he were an MLS free agent that we picked up and he played the way he did, I think a lot of people would say like, oh, he was pretty good. I thought he was good. Maybe he'll do better next week. But the fact that he's a multi-million-dollar international signing, the expectations change. And like, whether that's fair or not, it's true. And the expectations are different. So like, is he playing good enough for as expensive he is? No. But I think he's still probably the most dangerous option we have there. And I think he could still offer quite a bit if he just maybe brings it on a little bit more. But comparing this from what we saw him do last season, like last season, he looked like a fish out of water. Like he didn't know what to do. That's not the case this year. I think he looks like he knows what to do. He just needs to get that confidence, get that first goal, and hopefully it starts rolling after that.
Well, maybe to wrap this game up a little bit, let's go into the goal, because we haven't really talked about the Urruti goal, or maybe what led up to the Urruti goal and the goal itself and kind of where we ended up, and then maybe transition into Violette and what we can expect going forward. So this is a goal from Maxi Urruti, 88th minute, assisted by John Gallagher and Nick Lima. John Gallagher looking beautiful in the attack again. And the first thing I thought about this was like, what about 5 minutes before this? Like the stadium just felt like it was like willing this goal to happen. Like it was, everybody was standing, everybody was loud. I mean, it was among the most intense that I've seen it before. And then after the goal happened, like there were beer showers in every section across the board. And it was a beautiful moment. I don't know if it was just like a release of frustration or whatever, but it's one of my favorite moments in Q2.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. Like it's both in the moment and then back on the broadcast. There is like a literal moment. It's not like the crowd ramped up to that frenzy. It's like it happened. There was like I don't know, we had an attack going and the ball goes out and we get a throw in, and then just all of a sudden, boom, it's on. Like the stadium just goes crazy. And I think you're right. I think the players felt it. They ramped up their intensity, and that goal was beautiful. It's Driussi wins the ball off of a guy in midfield, breaks in transition, lays off a ball to Lima. It looks like it's like a little bit off, but actually ends up falling right into Lima's path. He chips it across to the backside. Gallagher finds it on the backside, heads it down right into Urruti's path. Urruti does well to react, get his foot on it, and just poke it past the keeper. But a beautiful little stretch of play. And this is like, these are the things when people don't watch the game and don't understand like how important Sebastian Driussi is this team. He gets no stats for that play, but had a lot to do with it. Not to take anything away from the other guys, but it's just like an extra note I had there. But really nice goal. And I think you're right. Like just the release of anxiety that happened in that stadium when it went in was pretty amazing.
Yeah. And then Urruti's celebration, I think, because I mean, he has a long history of Montreal, right? So I saw one person on Twitter criticizing that, but like he points to the back of his shirt instead of the front, which I think is like a little bit of the like don't celebrate against the teams that you played for before thing. It's like a soccer code.
Yeah. I think there's another way you could read it, which is, hey, I didn't start, but maybe I should have.
Well, okay. I was taking the most positive way about it. I did read that reaction too, for sure.
Which I think that's been something I've heard people saying on Twitter is like, okay, look, Urruti scored. Maybe he should have been in the whole time. I think, again, like go back and watch this game. Watch Gyasi Zardes just in every part of the game with the way that he moves. He affected this game in particular, just this one-off game. He affected it with his movement and his positioning in ways that Maxi Urruti just doesn't do and has never done. And so I think even though Maxi scored that goal, credit to him, it was great of him to be able to come in and do that. I think Austin FC's best path forward is still with Gyasi Zardes playing the majority of the minutes and using Maxi Urruti as that energy boost, that super sub role to come in and use that energy, use his legs, use his speed to come in and just kind of blitz a tired defense, which is kind of what happened the other night. So I still think that's the best way forward, even though we're not seeing the numbers come up with like the scoreline numbers coming up with Gyasi. The underlying numbers are there. The eye test movement stuff is there. Be patient with him. Go back and watch this game because I think Gyasi Zardes played a really good game, actually.
And I feel like that was one when I went back and rewatched it. I didn't necessarily appreciate that in the stadium live, but if you're paying attention to what he's doing, like it was something that was fairly easy to pick up on. And this kind of gets me into this tweet from Kevin Morris that I think we want to talk about both when we just generally about the roster, maybe the rest of the guys for the night, which is we still see a lot of talk about who should or should not start at X position. It's a long season, multiple competitions. The entire current bench will start a lot of games. Some bench guys will start key games because they line up better against the competition. Like, talk about the flexibility of the roster. And I think we've talked about FIFA brain, but maybe why it's even more important this season than the last two.
Yeah, I think there's going to be less of like one for one, this guy's backup situations this year. Gallagher ended up playing a couple of different positions in this Montreal game. He started off at the right back, but was attacking as a right wing. But then as Diego came off in the second half, he moved over and was playing as like the actual left wing, and kind of doing the same role Diego was doing. And so like as Diego's playing in the first game as more like a tucked in role, kind of an attacking midfielder, I don't think Gallagher can do that role. And so to say like, okay, is Gallagher the backup left wings? Like, well, maybe in certain games he is. In certain, like the things that Wolf is asking him to do in that game, maybe he is. But in other games, probably not. And I think that's going to be true at a lot of different positions going forward. And so I think just like it's going to be a more of like a horses for courses type approach. Like, what do we need for this game? Who's going to be a good fit? And we've already seen just even the first two games, the way that he's lined up, shaking things around, kind of mirror imaged the attacking formation and used different guys in different shapes, that there's a lot more flexibility than we kind of thought there was going to be going into it. And so I think it's like a little bit weird. I think there's also, it makes sense once you start to see how you're using some of it. I know some of it looks chaotic, but I feel like a lot of it does make sense and is playing to guys' strengths, which I like to see instead of being like so rigid in how we're trying to play.
Well, and specifically on that Diego point, like he played a lot more. I feel like he had a lot more defensive responsibility in that second match than the first one, which I think made his dad grumpy. At least from what I've seen on Twitter. So maybe talk on it a little bit, and I want to tie that into like, I'll have another point in a minute about a different player.
Yeah, so the defensive shape did look a little bit different. It was at times almost looked like we were defending in a back five. I think a lot of it, and Josh Wolf mentioned this in the post-game press conference, he didn't say exactly what it was, but he said, I asked Diego to do something differently against Montreal, and he took one for the team and did it, and not really saying what it was. Going back and watching the game again, he's essentially man-marking Aaron Herrera on that side. Aaron Herrera was really dangerous wingback for RSL last year, playing for Montreal now. Diego was essentially just man-marking him up and down the line. And so as he would get higher and higher up the field, Coleman would pinch in and would mark one of the forwards, and Fagundes would stay on Herrera. And so one of the most dangerous fullback / wingbacks in the league the last couple of seasons didn't really do much in this game. And a lot of that comes down to Diego Fagundes sacrificing himself essentially, because he was not super involved in the attack all the time. He would still get forward and get on the ball when he could, but whenever we're pressing, he was always just sitting right next to Herrera and making sure that he wasn't going to do anything dangerous with that ball. And it worked. Like Herrera wasn't super dangerous in this game.
Yeah. So what I wanted to tie that into is somebody who is really good at doing something we know they don't love, and especially for the next 10 weeks. Like Alex Ring was a great center back.
Oh man.
And it feels like for me, there is no doubt that the best solution to how to make it through the Julio Cascante injury situation is to play Alex Ring at center back. But he's very much on record as hating playing center back. So how do you, at what point do you just tell him like, okay, Alex, yeah, I know that you hate it, but like the team needs it and you're going to suck it up. And how much does he do that? And how much does this probably prevent him from doing that? And like, do you obviously we're not in these guys' heads, but do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it comes at a good time where he's not starting anyway. And so he says like, okay, I know you were start like last couple of years. Okay, I know you've been starting in midfield, but I want to try you at center back. Maybe then he's more reluctant. But now it's like you can either start on the bench or you can start at center back. I'm guessing he's going to be a little more excited to do it then. But also, he's still very influential in this game, and I think in a way that's like maybe better suited to him. In this game where we had more of the ball, we were pushing up really high, using a lot of the ball. That means we're kind of leaving ourselves exposed to counterattacks and kind of causing Vicenen and Ring to defend an open space quite a bit. That's actually better suited to Alex Ring than Julio Cascante, and like he's still pretty good on the ball like Cascante is, but is better in those like, okay, there's a fire, we need someone to put it out moments. And Ring did that over and over the other night. I think where this could start to fall apart, like I do think he is our best option for a lot of games and will be probably for the next few games. But looking forward to a team on April 8th, we play LAFC against a team who's going to have more of the ball, who's going to bring it to us a little bit more. I think we could start to see some of the cracks show with this Alex Ring at center back experiment, where he's actually having to play more center back, because he was playing essentially a really, really deep lying midfielder a lot of times, and then would chase the ball back and put out a fire. When he's in the box, having to like go toe to toe with center backs and really like fight with guys in there, I think we like, can he do it? Okay. Yeah, I think he can, but I don't know that he's going to be able to do it as well as someone who is actually a center back. And that could become a problem at that point.
Well, I just have like two more players that I want to talk about, and my opinion is going to be very brief, but like Leo Vicenen, Dave Pereira were both incredible.
Man, yeah.
In that match. And that's more or less all I have to say about them. And you should probably expand on that a little bit if you want to. But like, I think it's like as for Leo, it's obviously the best game I've seen him play. Like for Danny, it's probably also the best game I've seen him play. Like just in terms of like his influence all over the field. And it's like the way he covered the field too.
Leo Vicenen is the real deal. I don't know that we saw him get challenged individually enough times in that first game to know, like we knew he's really good on the ball. That was clear. But as far as like 1v1 defending in the open field, recovery speed, those kinds of things, we're just like, okay, I haven't seen enough to know. We saw it in this game, and he passed the test. So yeah, he's really, really good. I think if he can keep this level up, people around the league are going to start to notice and be talking about Leo Vicenen, and maybe even like Gabrielsen by the end of last year was starting to get attention and people knew that he was good. I think people might be speaking even higher of Leo Vicenen if he can keep this form up. Danny Pereira, I was saying just a couple of weeks ago that this is going to be a make or break season for him. Like I could see by the end of this year, him getting like attention from Europe, talks about being sold for a bunch of money, or us being like, well, Danny's probably going to be in MLS for the rest of his life. This is one of those games where I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe the first choice is more likely, because he really did like just was a leader with the way he played, was a real driving force in the game, like really influenced the game when he was on the ball. And at his best, he does that. And so he was able to do, but we've seen games where he doesn't do it as much. He loses focus, maybe isn't as tidy on the ball, and then has always been a bit of a liability defensively. In this game, he was great on the ball, really influential on the ball, and is getting better at being a defensive midfielder, not just by where he's standing on the field, but by how he's playing in that position. He's playing much more aggressively, reacting much quicker to things. It helps having Owen kind of be that kind of his attack dog there next to him. I think of them as like almost like good cop, bad cop, where Owen's kind of the ground cover guy and Danny's like the more quarterback guy who's going to be like kind of driving the play with the ball. But he's looking like he could make that step this season and become like a real next level player, which is really, really exciting to see.
Was there anybody else you want to talk about before we take a break and go into Violette and the RSL preview?
No, I think that's all.
All right. Well, we will be back.
When no one is around.
Blue Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FVF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FVF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education.
You can go to FVF.law to find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's FVF.law.
And we're excited to have a new sponsor to announce. So Moon Tower Soccer is also brought to you by Covert Auto Group. Covert Auto Group has been meeting the needs of local car buyers since 1909, which is 114 years, because of their service, financial expertise, and support after the sale.
In addition to supporting car buyers, Covert's an important part of the soccer community. Just last week, Covert gave everyone that bought a car a kit signed by Sebastian Drusi, Brad Stuver, Nick Lima, Emiliano Rigoni, and Maxi Urruti, all of whom are partners of Covert Ford and Covert Lincoln.
So if you're in the market for a new or used vehicle, be sure to check out covertauto.com. Moon Tower Soccer is also brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty.
Again, this is made possible by Sage Wilson Realty, who has a new name, but the same great service. So if you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, you should talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty.
We're also excited to tell you we'll have more ticket giveaways to announce soon. So stay tuned for more details and find them online at sagewilson.com.
All right, we are back to talk about Austin FC's very, very bad CONCACAF Champions League debut. So went to Dominican Republic to play against the Haitian side, Violette AC. I tweeted earlier today about how folks maybe shouldn't get too overly confident, just because CONCACAF Champions League is a weird tournament where weird things happen consistently. Like, not every once in a while. Like, this is kind of the norm, and ended up losing 3-0 to Violette. And so I think 2 of the goals came from Sherry, the big striker, and then he was somewhat involved in the last goal where Tarek was marking him and ended up blasting a ball into the back of his own net for the third one. So not a great showing for Austin FC in this one.
Yeah, and I guess when you say weird things can happen, for me that's like a 2-1 loss away, on like a weird, like a team bunkers and has a weird result, but like to just get absolutely blown off the pitch, I mean, more or less, against that squad from Haiti I was surprised by it. It's not at all I was expecting, which is one thing. We've talked about social media. There was like a clip online from the Violette players talking about beating Austin 3-0 earlier this week. And everybody was just like laughing themselves off the face of the earth about how absurd an idea that seemed. And then that is literally exactly what happened.
Yeah, guy called it. So Austin did not take their full squad. Guys who were left home include Driussi, Ring, Danny Pereira, Leo Väisänen. Who am I missing here? I think those are the big ones. There may have been some others, but Josh Wolf said in the post-game press conference that someone asked about it, and he kind of gave reasons for various guys and said that with Ring and Driussi, he essentially said he just didn't want him playing on turf. He just wanted to be careful with them. He said DP couldn't come, so I'm assuming he was referring to Danny Pereira, and we know that with his his residency status in the United States, it's sometimes not possible for him to travel outside of the United States. So I'm guessing that's what he meant by that. Leo Väisänen said he had some abdominal tightness and wanted to give him a rest. And so,
I mean, God bless him. Like, we should all, if Leo Väisänen can't go at some point in the future, that would be a real issue. So let's make sure that to carry that guy around so he doesn't have to take any step that's not on the field to
like a Fabergé egg, wrap him up in foam.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think there's health reasons you want to do it. Also, just like trying to balance competitions. We knew that he was going to have to do this and be mindful about rotating guys, balancing these competitions. Do we think that he went a little too far with this one, or what's your take on that?
I mean, I guess it's all to be seen in terms of what the results turn out in the future. But I'll just say no. I do not think Josh went too far in all that. Like the people who were on the field, more or less, other than a certain winger who shall not be named, are all people who have like a lot of league experience and should be able to hold their own against a club from Haiti playing in the Dominican Republic. And I feel like it was, for me, it was like a low effort kind of, in addition to like these guys had never played together, right? So that's one factor, right? There was no chemistry. Like none of these pairings at any positions have ever happened before. So like there's definitely an excuse in that, but I just feel like the effort was not great too, which is the part I was disappointed in.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think this collection of players, talent-wise, was good enough to win this game. And was the surface bad? Yes, the turf looked like it was in really bad. It's like strangely looked like the turf needed to be mowed.
Even though it's turf, yeah.
Was the stadium and travel and like locker rooms worse than they're all used to? Yeah, but they knew that was going to be the case. Like they had to know that and weren't ready for it. And it looked like to start the game off, they were moving the ball fairly well. They were trying some long balls in behind that were pretty close to coming off at times. And so I was like, okay, I like this patient approach. The Hector Jimenez started as that right fullback turned right winger in the attack. And so at times early on, he was not pushing up super high. And it's like, okay, they're going to play a little bit more reserved. This is what like the plan B looks like tougher road game, whatever. This is what that plan B looks like. And I was like kind of excited for the first few minutes. It's like, okay, I was like wondering what the more reserved version of this attacking formation looks like. But it turns out like it may have just been them being like a little bit complacent and a little bit sluggish and not actually moving fast enough to get into the spot they were in, because as the game went on, guys that we come to expect, guys like Maxi Urruti, who it's what he's known for is his energy. It did not look like it was there. It looked like he was moving slowly. Guys were having terrible first touches, passing terrible, several passes towards the end of the first half. Just a 6-yard pass just went out of bounds, just completely missed a guy. And so really poor play, really poor energy, really poor urgency from a lot of guys. And yeah, like I think you took a little bit of exception to something Wolf said in the post-game press conference about that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Cause the 6.5 minute post-game press conference that involved two people forgetting to take themselves off mute while asking questions. But Phil West kind of had the first question about how things turned out. And Josh originally said like, oh, this is all on me. You know, I take responsibility for the loss. And then when another question came later that had a little bit more to do with specifically how, like, was it tactics, was it substitutions or whatever, he said his issue was like in not preparing the guys enough to expect what they needed to do on the road in a CCL match. And I feel like it's taking half responsibility, right? Like I'm taking some responsibility, but also like a lot of the responsibility is on the players. But on reflection, like maybe that was the right take.
So wait, are you saying that you think it is Josh Wolf's fault, or do you think it's the players' fault?
Well, I didn't like the way Josh Wolf phrased it, but like ultimately now I would say it's like the players, I guess it's shared responsibility, but I feel like the players ultimately should have done more.
Yeah, I agree. And I kind of see that as Wolf maybe trying to take some pressure off of the players.
Which is a little bit different from what we saw, like frustrated Josh Wolf after losses, at least in the first season, and maybe a little bit last year. Where he was willing to take a little more on. So maybe that's maybe credit to Josh Wolf for that.
Again, like I think he has grown kind of in his confidence in press conferences, but I think that comes with winning. Like he has a bit more credibility in those moments. I think in that first season, he was like he didn't have anything to back that up with, and I don't think he felt like he had anything to hide behind necessarily, and so he's probably a little less ready to take responsibility for things like that. But I think now it seems like he seems a bit more less defensive, a bit more confident in those moments, and so I think that's probably part of it. Him just trying to take some of the credit, like the pressure off of the players for that. But like, yeah, whether it's him motivating them or them not motivating themselves enough, one of those things happened, and like they were clearly not into this game the way they needed to be, and it was they played in an embarrassing manner and ended up getting embarrassed.
So I think the guy's going to take the most criticism, and I think it's justifiable too. Like Tarek had,
oh my God,
he had a hand in he had a direct hand in one goal. Like, I guess my question to you is like, did Tarek have a worse night tonight, or did Kip Keller have a worse night versus St. Louis City? Because I feel like they were maybe Amro was more responsible for those 3 goals than Kip was, even with the back pass to Stroud, because like there are other factors in some of Kip's performance.
I was going to bring that up specifically to say that I think Tarek had a worse night tonight than Kip Keller did a week and a half ago. On the first 2 goals, the first one was just kind of like, it wasn't even really in transition. They just had the ball out wide. There wasn't enough pressure on the guy out wide with the ball. He whips it across.
I was surprised by Nick Lehman, not because that was Nick, right? Was on the guy out wide.
I believe so.
Did he keep more pressure on the ball? Maybe it was a little bit back to the effort.
Yeah. And the ball comes into the box, and Tarek does not, like, it's like he's trying to win a jump ball and just like jump higher than the guy. Does not get any contact to him, does not put any pressure on him. And the guy jumps higher than him and just hits a super powerful header, which is what you're able to do when you're completely uncontested. And it's like, that's not how you're supposed to do it. Like, whenever you are marking a guy in the box, you want to be like touching him already before the cross ever comes. You want to be able to touch him. And Tarek did not even attempt to get close enough to touch him until the ball was there, and just tried to jump higher than him and didn't do that either. The second goal comes around, and it's the same damn thing. The same thing happened. And I was ready to lose it. I remained pretty calm throughout this game just because I had prepared myself for chaos. I had prepared myself for something weird to happen. But this exact same goal getting scored over Tarek and him getting dunked on twice in a row with the exact same sequence of play and him not changing anything, not doing anything different was infuriating to me. The third goal, I was ready to be really mad at him again. Own goals happen. Like, I'll give a little bit of grace for that. But again, it comes from him not being touch tight on a striker who ends up getting a ball in there. This one, there was a weird deflection, maybe a little bit more grace there, but then I don't know what he was trying to do as he cleared it, but he rockets the ball into the back of the net past Brad Stuver.
It was a dramatic strike into the back of the net. I guess a couple things I want to go into. I don't know. We didn't have a lot of time to prepare for this one. Like, one, why is Brad Stuver in that game? Like, it's because Matt Brasano is just so bad. We don't even trust him with a rotated lineup. That's one question I have.
Yeah, I guess part of it is just trying to have some leadership, some consistency on the team. With a goalkeeper, you can afford to do that. It's not the same kind of physical endurance type of thing. Like, a keeper's not getting as worn down in these types of environments as the rest of the guys are. And so as long as Stuver didn't have to make 15 saves in 2 games in a row, like, he's probably okay to play 3 games in a week or 4 games in 2 weeks. So I think maybe that's where you put in some of that consistency, some of that veteran leadership. I think the other place they put it in was Hector Jimenez, who I thought had a pretty bad game, especially defensively. Diego Fagundes was, I thought okay, but didn't. He was asked to do the Driussi role essentially in this game, and I think partially him not being able to do it the same, but maybe more so not having the other guys around him to be able to link up with. I thought one guy, maybe the only guy that I thought like came out of this maybe like with stock a little bit higher is Sofian Jeffal. I thought he actually looked okay and like did a pretty good Danny Pereira impression out there. I think it gave me faith that if you put him out there with the starting 11 and swap him in for Danny Pereira, that he could kind of do some of the same stuff and the team would look similar to what it does with Danny out there. So that, I think that's good to know that if we need to, we have that option.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue that point. And I think what this game left me wanting more of is like seeing some of him with like the first 11 to see what he can do. Because I hoped going in that he'd be some kind of breakout performer, but just there was not the opportunity for that with the way that everybody else played. And so I think he did a pretty good job, and I would love to see what he could do with everybody else around him, sort of like firing on all cylinders. So I think he's probably had the best performance. I'm still super worried about Valencia, just because I feel like the potential's always there, but the performance never is there.
Yeah.
And he got like a bad yellow card, like bad in terms of like there's no, like I don't even know if he touched the guy, like there's no reason for him to get a yellow card, which maybe set it off on the wrong foot. But I'm a little worried about him. I don't know how much more time we need to spend on this match. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, I mean, it seems so anomalous, like just with the it's CCL. Like, what else can you say? This happens sometimes. Looking forward to this next leg. Austin will now go to Real Salt Lake. We have a preview coming up with Keith Costigan here in a little bit. But the following Tuesday, they'll come home and play against Violette again. Violette, we've talked about their visa issues over the last couple of months. It seemed like they had everybody available in this game. They are not expected to have everybody available in this return leg for Austin. So when they come to Austin, it will not be with this full team, more than likely. Austin will have their full team. They need to win by more than 3 goals, essentially. So it's to set up kind of the format. At the end of these 2 matches, whoever has scored the most goals total wins. If it's tied, the tiebreaker will be away goals. So because Austin did not score an away goal, if we win 4-1 on Tuesday, Violette goes through. And so it needs to be a huge victory on next Tuesday in order for Austin to go through to this next leg, which is possible with the starters in this game, with a weakened Violette side, them having to travel here in Q2 with our fans. It's completely possible. They could do it, but it's by no means a sure thing. And I think this game showed us that, and we definitely dug a hole tonight that is going to have to be excavated out, and we'll see if Sebastian Juicy and company are capable of doing that.
And are capable of doing that on like 72 hours rest or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, not like it's a quick turnaround. All right, well let's talk about the next match. Let's transition out of this and look at RSL.
All right. Yeah, we're going to take a break, but we'll be right back with Apple TV and MLS season passes Keith Costigan, which a guy I've listened to on TV for a long time. We're honored to have him join the show and preview this match with us. So hang tight. We'll be right back with that.
Well, you don't need words to tell me things that drive me wild, right out of my brain.
All right, we are thrilled to be joined by Keith Costigan. He was the play-by-play commentator for the Seattle Sounders since 2016, but now he's part of the new MLS Season Pass team on Apple TV. Keith, thanks so much for joining us, man. We appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thank you guys for having me on. I know it's not been a great day for Austin FC fans, so I'll try to be as gentle after calling your game earlier today as I possibly can be.
Yeah, so Keith was on the call we just got finished watching Austin FC's first ever CONCACAF Champions League game, and it was the most CONCACAF Champions League game I've ever watched, I think, in result anyway, at least. So, yeah, we're going to get into RSL versus Austin here in a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I guess any words of wisdom for Austin fans after what we just saw, Keith?
Well, I think what you get in CONCACAF Champions League is I know what Josh Wolf was trying to do today, which is like balance the squad and make sure you're fresh for the weekend. But then you have to add in the fact that you've lost, Cascante early on in the season through injury. Center back position is not a healthy one for you guys, even when everybody that you have available right now is on the field. And I don't care who it is. You go on the field and you're trying to, mix and match. You're going to get punished, and that's what we saw today. So difficult result, learning experience, and I do think until you add to that position at center back, it might be difficult for Austin to kind of replicate what we saw last season. But really tough day, but you still get the second leg next week to turn it around at home.
All right, let's move on to the RSL game on Saturday. So looking back at the history between these two teams, it's been pretty eventful. So I think we went 1-1 in 2021, 1-1 in the 2022 regular season, and then Austin beat RSL in penalties in the playoffs. And I think in those 5 games there have been 3 red cards given. And so always an eventful matchup with these two. I know RSL lost Sergio Cordova and Aaron Herrera, 2 pretty big contributors, especially late in the season last year for them. But they're getting Damir Kreilach back. So looking at this RSL team, what do you see from them? What do you expect from them this season?
Well, the way you described it, 1-1 one season, 1-1 the next, multiple red cards, you beat them on penalty. That's who RSL are. They're very difficult to beat. I don't think they're a team that come in saying we have to be pretty with the way we play. I think Pablo Mastroeni was a guy that was really combative as a player, and that's the way his teams are. So they don't mind, even if they're at home, they don't mind being the spoilers, almost inviting you to take chances, be aggressive with your play, and trying to hit you on the counter. And that's who they are. They're always going to be a difficult out. I worked at Seattle Sounders. They knocked the Sounders out of the playoffs a couple of seasons ago. They're just a really tough defensive team. Having said that, I looked at them last week in that Seattle game, and the one thing for me is they are a transition team, but they don't have what they've had in the past in the final third. Anderson up front is not for me, not an elite level striker. I still think they need to add in that position. Cordova gave them a little bit more. So I think they're a beatable team. Having said that, away from home, where you coming off, I know a lot of big name players were rested, but you're coming off a midweek game as well. It's going to be difficult. I expect this one to be a really, really tight game. But given that RSL don't have the firepower in that final third, I think it's one that Josh Wolf will say it's winnable. It's winnable because they don't have that attacking threat that other teams have.
So, Keith, you casually mentioned that Seattle game, which we have often referred to as the most cynical playoff game in the history of anything we've ever seen. Do you want to, open up a little bit on that? Share what the perspective was on that? Because we talked to some RSL guys who are like, no, it wasn't that cynical. And I don't believe that. I think it was pretty awful. It's what was your perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, when you go 120 minutes and you don't have a single shot, it's, what was the game plan? We all know what it was, but I don't think RSL have to make apologies. What I do like about RSL, I like people who are honest. I like teams who are honest. And I don't think Pablo Mastroeni came out and said, well, we had all this possession and we were, looking at, the coaching buzzwords. No, he was like, look, Seattle are a good team. We came to fight and scrap and make it difficult. So you know what? At the end of the day, they're not there to make it easy for you. I called the game. It was devastating for me to call it as a Seattle play-by-play guy. But at the end of the day, I sat back and had a beer with my colleague, Keller, and we said, you know what? RSL came with a game plan. They implemented the game plan, and they won. So they will not apologize for it. Now, I almost think at times their fans can wear it with a badge of honor. Sports are not about everybody playing the same way. I don't want it to be like that. I want teams that are, aren't afraid to make it difficult for, the sexier teams. Like you have Driussi, who's for me an elite level player in this league. I love watching him play. Guess what? RSL aren't going to give him the space to play. They're going to say, yeah, we know you're good. We're going to make it even more difficult. I think that makes it maybe not a fun watch for the neutral at all times, but it makes it a fun tactical watch. And I think that's what we're going to see this weekend again. Similar RSL will make it difficult, even though they're at home. And I'm almost there, Austin, to break them down with their sexier player names, if you want to go that way.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head, where they know exactly who they are, and they're not ashamed of it. So I think, we talked about the guys they lost in Cordova and Herrera, but they did have Damir Kreilach come back into the team, and he's a player I really like. And so I think he's another one that Austin will need to be careful with, especially if he starts to find the form that we saw from him a couple of years ago, because he's a really dangerous player. Looking at Austin's lineup going into this one, like you said, Austin rested some guys. I know, just watched Josh Wolf's post-game press conference mentioning some guys were a little bit banged up. Other guys he was kind of protecting from the turf surface there in the Dominican Republic. We should have what we like a first choice 11 minus Julio Cascante to play against them on RSL. Could you see Austin still limiting any guys this weekend because of that return CCL leg, or do you think that they'll be able to put out a top 11 in both of those games?
No, I think, look, there's a bit of turmoil with Violette in terms of what players are going to be given visas for the second leg. So
right.
the Violette side we saw tonight is probably not going to be the Violette side you saw next week. And myself and Alexi Lalas were saying tonight, look, you might be 3-0 down, but some people may say Austin would still be the favorites to go through, as bizarre as that sounds when you're 3-0 down. But I don't think you don't rest in this game unless your sole focus is on that Saturday game. So I think you are going to see the absolute strongest 11. And it is easier when you have the home game. You feel like you have a little bit more rest. You feel like you have a little bit more preparation. You don't have a day of travel. Yes, I know it was a chartered flight to Dominican Republic, but it is still, it is still a travel day. So I think the Zardes, the Driussis, the Rings, those kind of players, they come into play again. They're going to play this weekend, guaranteed, if they're fully fit. And I think they all come into play. As the second leg approaches as well. So I think we see it in Europe a lot where players play Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday. I think that's what we're going to see over the next 10 days for Austin FC. This was the game where Josh Wolf was going to gamble. Yep, the gamble kind of backfired because the squad didn't deliver. But I don't think we're going to see that same gamble again Saturday or again next week for the second leg.
So, what do you see as Austin's most obvious path to victory? Because I feel like Austin has struggled with breaking down teams who sit back and are willing to defend and let Austin to have the ball. And that seems like exactly what RSL is going to do. So, where do you see, as if you were an Austin fan, where's your hope? Where's your expectation of coming out with a win on Saturday?
Yeah, no, it is difficult. I always say, look, it's the obvious thing to say, right? Get an early goal. Okay, how do you get an early goal? This team is sitting back. For me, it's speed of play. Sometimes when you play against teams that sit deep, you take more touches. It's logically you have more time in deeper areas, and you go, I'll take another touch. I'll take another touch, and I'll dribble. And all of a sudden, you get players doing things that they wouldn't do. You might have Pereira or somebody else taking extra touches. But I think you got a little glimpse tonight of what's important. When Owen Wolf came on the field tonight, he started moving the ball a little bit quicker. And I think that's it. It's all about tempo, because RSL are at home. So it's not going to be as complete a sit back as you would see away from home. But when you have the ball, you can't allow them to get back into shape. You can't allow to get RSL to get everybody behind the ball. You have to move the ball quickly. You have to get the ball forward quickly. And in Zardes, you have a willing runner. In Driussi, you have a player who can find pockets where I don't think anybody else can find them in the league. And I hope Ring plays in midfield, and I hope he's partnered with Owen Wolf, because I'm a really big fan. I think you have players that can move the ball quickly. So for me, that would be the key. The tempo has to be set, even though you're away from home, by Austin, and it has to be moving that ball at a pace where RSL can't get their shape and just drop everybody back as they want to.
Yeah, I think that's really good insight. As far as the Alex Ring thing goes, I really, really think we're probably going to see him in the back line again this week. he had a really tremendous game against Montreal over the last weekend. And just that aside, we don't really have any other options there. And so I really do think it's going to be Owen Wolff and Danny Pereira in those deeper lying midfielders with Alex Ring playing as a center back again. But if he can play as well as he did against Montreal, then I don't see that as a bad thing necessarily. I think he was really, really helpful in that game.
Yeah, and I would argue that Josh Wolf may say, look, this is a game where we're not coming up against a really elite level striker, so you might be able to get away with it. I would just say long term, I'm a Liverpool fan. I remember 2 years ago, Liverpool had to put their centre midfielder at centre back. And eventually, you lose a little bit in the back and then you lose a little bit in midfield because he's one of your best midfielders still for me. I do think, I'm speculating here, I don't know any information, but I do think we will see movement from Austin FC in terms of those centre-back positions because, the Cascante injury is massive. Gabrielson, obviously from last year. I do think there's a need there long-term. I do think you have to fit someone in there. I don't think you want to be thinking about Ring as your centre-back for the rest of the season. That would be my opinion. Might be wrong, but that would be my suggestion. Maybe 1 or 2 more games, but moving forward, I would suggest there's going to be a move made there.
Yeah, I think that would be the hopes of Austin FC fans, just because, Alex Ring had a killer game, but he is, at the end of the day, still not really a center back. And I think over time, we'll start to see why he's not a center back, and some of those cracks will start to show a little bit. But if we can get him to play that well just through the next few games, next few months until Julio Cascante is back and ready, then that's all we need. But if we can get those reinforcements, I think Austin FC fans would gladly take them at this point. All right. Well, Keith, thank you so much for joining us. Your wisdom about this league is invaluable. So thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you, guys. And I look forward to being on the call. Hopefully, you guys will have a better week. This is my first Austin FC game today. Hopefully, I'll bring you a little bit better look this weekend.
Yeah. Hopefully, we'll give you a little bit better impression for sure.
Yeah. I am sure you guys will. Thank you guys for meeting me.
Keith is going to be on the call with Maurice Seydoux. By the way, Maurice Seydoux, I think I saw him for the first time. He was working for CBS for Champions League stuff, wasn't he? The last couple of years. I think he does a tremendous job. I really like him. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys do on the call. And also, we've had 2 home games so far, so we've not actually gotten to see that much of the Apple stuff. So I'm kind of looking forward to being able to watch the whole broadcast and see it from top to bottom.
Yeah, no, look, and by the way, let's not give Mo too much credit. We want to keep him. Look, I can't stress enough, like myself and Mo are really good friends. For me to be able to share the booth with him is incredible. Like one of the best people you could ever meet. Forget about how good a job he does. He's just an incredible human. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear your guys' feedback. I've been watching it as a fan because I've got to do early games and sit back. And of course, I'm like, you guys will say, yeah, of course you're going to say it. You're on Apple TV. Tell us how great it is. I'm pretty sure you're going to come back to me next week and say that as well. The quality of the shows, the amount of stuff that you can do with the games, and just the quality of the picture and the. Hopefully, you guys think the quality of the commentary. I mean, but it's really exciting to be part of. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it more if you get a result. As you guys have said, going to RSL is, it's a tough place to go, but I'm sure you'll come up with what you put together.
All right. Well, Keith, thanks again. We really appreciate it. And good luck on the call on Saturday.
Thank you, guys. All
right, we want to thank Keith Costigan one more time for joining us. Before we wrap up, we'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Just stop right now, open up whatever app you're using to listen to us, give us a review, give us a rating. It helps us find more people, helps more people find us. You can also come continue the conversation with us on Twitter at LViajero87, at jbentley_ATX, and at Moon Tower Soccer on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And then sign up for our Patreon. We are I swear we keep saying this. We're getting close. I'm finalizing Patreon rewards for 2023. So we'll have some details on that soon. And then visit the Striker where you can get a 30% discount with the code Moontower23. That's 23 now with a capital M, Moontower23. Jeremiah, what can folks look out for?
Well, we talked a lot about, or more than we probably wanted to, about the CONCACAF Champions League match. And I think this is like a highlight of the content that you only get on the Striker. So Arch Bell wrote probably the only preview article of meaning on this match before it happened, because he's the guy that knows what's going on throughout this region. And then there's also sort of a tournament center on the Striker website for everything that's going on the CONCACAF Champions League. So if you want to find coverage on this in a place you can find almost nowhere else, be sure to check out thestriker.com.
All right. Well, thanks so much for listening. We will be back next week with a new episode of Moon Tower Soccer, where we will review the Real Salt Lake match. We're going to have to record this next one because of the timing of the game. We're going to record it on Monday night as usual and have it out on Tuesday. So we will not be able to talk about the second leg of CCL. Depending on how that game goes and how we feel about it, we may put out a special mini episode later in the week to talk about that. But we'll see how it goes. In any case, we'll have an episode out on Tuesday for you. Until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Thank for nothing, you never.
La gente
Oh my God.